Hey guys, Eric, your coach here. Very excited for you to join me again. We are on our 14th team meeting with Ideal Day Scheduling. And so, what that means is we've been working on all the previous meetings to create case acceptance, to get the patients to say yes. And hopefully, now you're seeing the results of that. You're seeing patients fill up the schedule. And now it's time to figure out how do we make sure the schedule is right, how to put it in the right pieces. It's so important to have an ideal day. Let's work our way backwards, right? You get ideal day scheduling when prior to that you've had ideal financial arrangements. When prior to that you've had ideal case acceptance. When prior to that you've had ideal treatment planning. So all those things in a row. So it goes treatment plan correctly, ideally, ideal case acceptance, then ideal financial arrangements, and then ideal day scheduling. And so next month, we'll actually be working on those financial arrangements next meeting. So it is important for it to have that. You can't have ideal day scheduling if you don't have case acceptance. You can't have case acceptance if you don't have good treatment planning, comprehensive, ideal treatment planning. Make sense? All right. So remember, this is a system, and without a system in place, it cannot succeed. So when the system breaks, the success breaks with it. You can't expect to hit goal if you're not scheduling to hit goal, if you're not planning it that way, blueprinting your day. So we'll look at all of these things together. You have your technical expertise. That's your clinical CE. You've got that down. And now the people skills, our ability to get people in the schedule the proper way, is going to give us the ability to have that successful ideal day scheduling. So here's our outline today. Effective and efficient scheduling. Remember, those both, you have to have both of those here. You can't have one or the other, because I could be really efficient and just run a bunch of patients through and not hit goal. I could be super effective and take a really long time with my patients, right? And again, not hit goal because I'm not efficient enough. It takes both. So make sure that, as you increase your clinical expertise, your speed picks up, and it's like Goldilocks, not too fast, not too slow. So do you know your daily goals by provider? So you might have a practice goal, a big monthly goal, or an annual goal, but I need to know what that goal is for each individual provider per day. All right. Make sure that in your schedule, you can set up a view where you just look at that provider so that you can see the goal for that provider and then put the appointment in to hit that goal. I'll show you how to do that. We'll talk about rock, sand, and water, and which appointments are which and where they go and how we hold space for each of those. And then top down, bottom up scheduling. And of course, when to break these rules. All right, let's jump in. So let's start with those goals. So look at this. If you want to take a picture of this, you can. I'll show this slide later. But we're going to go goals, views, how to do it, and then when to break the rules. All right, so let's look at goals. So there's two ways you can do this. You can base your goal on either A, hey, last year we really like what we did and we want to grow X percentage, 10%. So you take that, let's say you were at $910,000 last year in production. You add that 10%. You want to be $1 million practice this year. Then you could break that down. We can figure that out. Or you can just say, I know I might not be there yet, but on a per provider basis, I want to make sure all my providers are at least scheduling to $1 million model. And I think that is a very smart way to go. And you'll see why as this unfolds. So you should have your coaching results tracker in place. So these numbers should be very easy for you to see by provider. And we should be able to look at it and set goals for next year really easy. There's actually a tab on there that helps you establish it. So once you have a complete year in there, it'll add a 10%, 20%, whatever you want to do. You can just calculate it. It'll figure it out for you. So if you don't have the tracker, email me, Eric, your coach at charter.net. I'll get it to you and we can work on it. Okay, so I will go with $1 million model here. That doesn't necessarily mean you're limited to $1 million. It's a minimum and it's per provider. So the more providers you have, the more than $1 million it is. And it's based on 1 doctor and 2 hygienists. So if we look at each of those providers, we divide that up. We say, all right, well, $1 million is 12 months, is $83,333 per month. You work about 16 days per month. We're going to be right around $5,300 per day. That's a pretty typical production day for this model. And then we break that $5,300 per day into providers. By the way, this is not about ideal day schedules. Not how do we get all the money. The dollars, because we produce in dollars, it's our only measurement tool. So how are we being effective and efficient with how we schedule is determined by the numbers that we hit. And so just because there's a dollar sign in front of it doesn't mean it's about money, 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 money. What it means is that's our measurement tool to decipher, are we being as efficient and effective as possible? And this works really well for that. So let's break down the 5,300 by provider. Number one, let's look at the hygiene first. Basically, this says you got to schedule 1,250 to get 1,000. What I mean by that is you have a daily goal and then you have a net production goal, because most offices take the exam that's scheduled in the hygiene column. So in the hygiene appointment, that production is being counted as hygiene production when really it's doctor production, because by the time you walk it out, you change that provider right to doctor as you walk it out. So when it hits the ledger, it goes from hygiene production for exam at $60 to doctor production at $60. So if you're doing 4 of those a day, right? 4 times 60, $240, right? So there's your $1,000 net. Now, I know that we have to hit at least $1,000 per day in hygiene. So that means if you're doing 8 exams a day, you need to increase your scheduled goal by that exam fee times the number of patients you do per day. So figure out how many exams you average per day in the hygiene schedule and multiply that by your production. That becomes your daily gross production goal. When you look at the schedule, I need my hygienist to schedule to 1,500 so that by the end, he then hits $1,000 actual production. We still get that exam. It's just going to be on the doctor side over here. And we'll reverse that on the doctor end. Doctor gets the exam as a bonus to scheduling. So we know that the difference between 1,250 and 5,300 becomes a doctor goal. Now, let me say this. If you have 2 hygienists, that's 2,500. Now your doctor goal is now 2,800 per day. That's pretty easy to hit. So if you have 1 hygienist, your doctor goal becomes higher. It now becomes $4,000, right? Now remember, the doctor's going to get exam credit, but all the money's going to wash. So you still want to have a good scheduling goal so that by the time it all washes out, it all matches that 5,300 per day. Okay. So you may, here in a second, you're going to want to push pause and make sure you figure out your math. So your doctor goal could be anywhere from that $3,300 to $4,300 amount, somewhere in that range. And if you have more than 1 doctor, you're going to just do the same amount for all of them. Again, that's a minimum. Now, let's say you've been producing, you've been doing this for a long time, and 4,300 is a very low goal for you. Then you're going to look at last year and you're going to say, what did I average per year as an individual provider, as a doctor, and add 10% to that and figure out what that is. That's where your tracker comes into play. Okay. So go ahead and push the pause button here and make sure you understand what everyone's individual provider is. Take 3 or 4 minutes to do this. Okay. We got a lot to get through today. All right, go for it. Okay. So everyone has an individual daily production goal. And you can just figure, if you're a hygienist, you don't work 16 days a month. You say, well, I'm working 8 days a month. I work 2 days a week. And my daily goal is 1,250. 8 times 1,250 now becomes my monthly goal. Very easy. All right. Let's look at some rules. My first one is that everyone leaves an appointment being created. What I mean by that, notice that created is in quotes. So created, not scheduled. So if a patient comes out that their next visit would be a hygiene appointment or a doctor appointment, doesn't matter. I'm going to create that appointment in my schedule. I'm going to double click, type their name, pull the treatment plan in, give it the appropriate length of time, assign it to a provider. And then at the notes, let's say they're not ready to schedule. They just can't do it. You used all the verbal skills in the world. You've handled everything properly and they can't schedule, and you're going to follow up with them in 2 weeks. Then in the note of that appointment, I'm going to insert the date line. Patient needs to talk it over with their spouse. I'm going to call them by 2 weeks, whatever that date is, and put my initials. And then instead of scheduling that appointment, in Dentrix, I'm going to hit wait, will call. I'm not going to pinboard it. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to go wait, will call. And what that does is it puts it in their unscheduled appointment list for that patient. I do not run my unscheduled appointment list. I don't work off that list, so I'm not worried about putting appointments in there. Using this rule means that when that patient calls back or I call to follow up, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel and create the appointment again. So in Dentrix, if I double click in the appointment and I type in Ricky Bobby and alert pops up and says, this patient has an unscheduled appointment, would you like to view it? We always say yes. So I click yes. It opens up their window, has their names, has their appointments, has their treatment plan, and I can see unscheduled appointment. I single click on that and the description tells me what it is. And then I can double click on it, open it up. If it's not the appointment I want, I click wait, we'll call again, and I go back in and get a different one, or I can hit other appointments and look at all of them that way. Does that make sense? All right. In Eaglesoft, it's like a tickler file. However you can get that appointment to stay without being stuck on your schedule anywhere. I don't want to see it visually. And then what I do is I go out 2 weeks. I go into my notes on my appointment book in the top left corner, and I type, has Ricky Bobby scheduled hygiene doctor appointment yet? ? My initials. So when I get to that day, I know I have a task to do. That is my unscheduled appointment list. That's how I follow up with those appointments. If I call following message one, conversation one rules, and I do that and I leave a message, then I'm going to take that note and I'm going to copy and paste it to maybe next week and see, has he scheduled yet? I'm going to keep moving that until I get him scheduled. Okay? You're welcome to email me on that for more support if you need to. All right. You need to know your goal. Let's talk about how to use the 80-20 rule with your goal. So if my doctor goal is, let's say for easy math, let's say it is, let's say it's 5,000 a day. And I know that using the 80-20 rule means I need to hit 80% of that goal by my first 5 hours. And 20% I'm going to hit in the last 3 hours. So I do a 5-hour morning with a 1-hour lunch and then a 3-hour afternoon. That's essential to doing ideal day scheduling. Too many people think I'm going to divide it like this, 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the afternoon. They wonder why they can't hit their goal. Why do I have, rock or large appointments down here? You need to have enough time to get that big rock appointment in. And so if I'm going to hit 80% of my goal in this section, right, that means that 80% times 5,000, right? That's $4,000 in 5 hours. 4,000 divided by 5 hours is $800 per hour to make it in this block. And you'll see how I show the schedule. Hey, it's got to be $800 an hour to be in here. And then down here, this just has to be $333 per hour to get my last $1,000. 3 times 333, right? $1,000. So rocks, sand, and water. That's how we're going to do this. Really simple. I know this is really fancy PowerPoint here, right? So in your views, I'm going to show you what a view looks like. You're going to create rock, sand, and water pre-blocks, blueprints, whatever that is. You're going to have that just set aside so that you can hold those. So when I look at an individual provider, I can see that. In Dentrix, you have your F1 through F12 keys on your keyboard. And what I do is in my view, I set up a view and it says view 1, I want all my providers, all my operatories to show, and I want my dollar amount in the top right corner. Pretty easy to do. In my second view, F2, I want to see just my doctors or doctor. Okay. If I have more than one doctor, I want to see what my doctor department's scheduled to produce that day. Maybe I need to be able to a view where I can schedule with any doctor. So I want to be able to view that. And then F3 and 4, I'd break up my doctors. So my F3 view becomes doctor 1. My F4 view becomes doctor 2. And what's so important is I only show their operatories they work in, right? Only the days they work. And in the top right corner, I have my production amount up there, always being there. And if I know my daily goal and I look up there and I'm looking at just Dr. Smith, and I know that his daily goal is $5,000, I've got a $500 operative for an hour appointment in my pinboard ready to schedule. I look up there and he's way short. and that's the only time I have left, I'm probably not going to put the appointment there. I'm going to actually skip over it. Oh my gosh. So it's supply and demand. If you can do that, then skip over it. And we'll talk about when to break the rules. So I'm going to actually schedule based upon a time versus a production amount that fits into a puzzle. When you're putting a puzzle together, you always start with the outline. The rocks. Those are the rocks, okay? And you put those in first. You would never put a puzzle piece in that doesn't fit and just force it, right? I'm sure you put a puzzle together and you get to the end, there's one piece missing. There's an opening. There's an opening. We got to put someone in there. Again, we'll talk about when to break the rules, okay? So make sure you know how to set up your views. Now, some softwares, you can't do that. This is one of the reasons I really love Dentrix, because I can set up a view by provider, look at the daily goal right there. It's in plain sight, and I can look and say, how much time do I have left to hit that number? And I can schedule them. I can also, once I'm in that view, hit week at a glance, and now I'm looking at a whole week, so 4 days at once, and I can just go next week, next week, next week, and I can look for the appointment time that I need. Very simple to use. Love Dentrix scheduling. All right. If you need to do that, you don't know if your software does, then contact your software and say, how do I look at just my provider and see their daily goal? I want that view, and see what they say. Let me know too. I'd love feedback. Email me. All right, let's talk about rock, sand, and water. We've all probably heard the analogy of the professor standing in front of his class, and he has a big mason jar, and he puts a bunch of big rocks in it and fills it up with the rocks, and he asks the class, he said, is it full? And they say, yeah, it's full. Then he takes the bag of sand and he pours the sand in and fills it all in. And he says, now is it full? And they say, yeah, now it's full. And then he takes a glass of water and he pours the water in and it fills it right up. And he says, now it's full. Okay. So flip the script. If I pour the water in first and I fill it up, and then I try to take some sand in and pour it in, what's going to happen? I got a mess. I fill it up with sand. Maybe some water stays. It's full. And then I take some rocks and try to pour them in. They're not even going to fit in. Okay. So the rocks have to go in first. Now, here's what we know. What is a rock appointment? Well, it's anything that's at value of $800 per hour or more. For my analogy, maybe your goal was 3,300 and you took 3,300 and you said, I got to hit 80% of 3,300 in 5 hours, right? So I got to hit 2,500 in those first 5 hours. My rock now time becomes $500 per hour. So you define what your rock value is per hour, okay? And then your sand becomes that 333 or $100 an hour, right? To hit your 2,800, whatever that is, you figure out what your sand value is, and then water is free. Those are deliveries, right? Those sorts of things. So right now, I want you to push the pause button, figure out your math. Right? We need a 5-hour morning and a 3-hour afternoon, or maybe you're running a 6-hour straight. Okay. Then you need to go, right? 4 hours. I got to hit 80% of my goal. So push the pause button, figure out what your rock and sand values are. All right, go for it. Okay. Now that you have that amount, then you need to know what the rules are here for scheduling rock, sand, and water. I call them healthy ratios. Okay. So what that means is, well, I'll ask you, you guys know these answers, right? What's going to become more easily accessible to you? What do we have a plethora of? A bunch of rock appointments or a bunch of sand appointments? The sand. We have more sand availability, single tooth composites, new patient appointments, exams, very small production amounts. Water is crown deliveries, adjustments, no charge follow-ups, suture removals, whatever it might be. All those are waters, okay? Emergency could be a water appointment. So if I know I have a bunch of sand appointments, right, to put in, a lot of them, but I only have 3 hours a day to put them in the afternoon, they're going to be scheduled further out in the schedule than the 5-hour rock appointment available I have with just a little bit of rocks to put in there. They're not going to be scheduled as far out as possible. So you might have a 1-to-4 ratio, a 2-to-6 ratio. In other words, for every 1 week it takes to get in for rock, it might take 4 weeks to get in for sand. That's okay. That's normal. Some people get to where, oh my gosh, I'm making people wait for their single surface composite filling appointment for 40 minutes. That's okay. You know what is important? The fractured tooth that has decay underneath an old metal filling. We need to get that in next week. 2 weeks. So maybe you're scheduled 2 weeks for your rock appointment. You might be scheduled 6 weeks for so 1-to-3 ratio. You might be scheduled 2 weeks for rock and 6 weeks for sand. That's okay. So when you schedule your preps 1 week out, at the same time, schedule the delivery 4 weeks from that, 5 weeks from that, whenever your lab cases come back. Don't wait for them to come in and then try to put the sand or water appointment in 3 or 4 weeks, and you're scheduled beyond that in the afternoon and go, oh, I got to break the rules. I got to put a delivery in the morning because we got to get this crown delivered. Okay. So rock, sand, and water, hold the time. I'm going to show you how it looks to hold that time. So you've got to hold that rock time or say, wow, it's not worth $500 or $800 per hour. It doesn't go in the morning. Okay. Healthy ratios. We just talked about that. All right. Here's some practical things. Top down, bottom up scheduling. So when you give a patient the option to pick where they schedule, this goes out the window. So your verbal skills have to match. So I give them a choice, not a chance. So I say, this provider is here Monday through Thursday and does this type of procedure either starting at 8 a.m. or finishing by 1 p.m., somewhere in there. Which day of the week could you make something like that work? I set the parameters. I give a choice, not a chance. Because if I go, when would you like to come in? I need an afternoon, after 3:30. Oh, we can't do that. Well, why not? You said, when can I come in? So don't set yourself up for an argument. Set yourself up for success by giving them a choice, not a chance. And so what top-down, bottom-up scheduling means is if I know my first 5 hours of the day, I've got an hour and a half, crown build up, maybe another filling on there, and I want to put this in between 8 and 1. Well, I would either start them at 8 or finish them at 1 if it was a brand new morning. There was nobody else in there. Okay. Now let's say my 8 to 9 is already taken. Well, then I would start them at either 9 or finish them at 1. But if it's a brand new wide open day, I would not go, well, let's put you right here for an hour and a half. And now I've got, an hour and a half in the morning and 2.5 here. Because then what walks out is a big case for 4 hours and I can't put them in that day. And so if they say, okay, yeah, I can do a Thursday. Okay, so next Thursday, I can do either an 8 a.m. or an 11:30. Which would work better for you? Top down, bottom up. And I start putting appointments in that are rock appointments, and I meet in the middle. And maybe there is a 10-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute wasted time in that middle, but I've done it as efficiently as possible. Now I can put a sand or water in there, or maybe a final impression for a denture for $2,500, right? But if you start just putting things in where the patient dictates to you, you're going to have a real hard time with ideal day scheduling. So what that means is when you go for surgery, they tell you when the surgery is. Okay, so your next surgery appointment would be this time. For hygiene, it's a bit different. Now, you don't just throw them in, but you do make sure that you schedule it right. And so I'm going to show you a screen where we're going to do our hygiene blocks. We're actually going to take that daily goal and we're going to break it into 3 different values, and you'll be able to schedule the goal that way as well. Emergency time, you might put that in the middle of there. You might, in the afternoon, find slots. At your morning huddle, decide that. If you have flexibility with your schedule, if your schedule is very rigid and perfect and scheduled to goal, and you don't get a lot of emergencies, you don't, see new patient emergencies, right? You don't see them that way. You only see new patients for comp exams because you can't do that. Then I would consider blocking 2 hours a week of red time. You'll see that in my example here. And we did that on Mondays and Wednesdays, or Mondays and Thursdays. It was right when we got back from the weekend, right before we left for the weekend. and sometimes every other day, Mondays and Wednesdays. We went back and forth on the Wednesday, Thursday thing. And it all depends on how many emergencies you get. If you're doing really good comprehensive care on a preventive basis, you don't get a lot of emergencies. And so it might be follow-ups or things like that. So you need to judge how often your schedule is getting messed up by an emergency. And what I mean by that is if I've got a top 20 patient who's, paying a lot of money to have my undivided attention, and then I've got somebody over here who's screwing up and not, taking things serious, and they've had a toothache off and on for 3 months, but they got to get in today. And so you see them and you make your great patient wait. This bottom 20 is ruining your day, and your top 20 is getting ticked off because you said you were going to do something, you're not doing it. So I pre-block that last hour of the day on 2 days a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, from 4 to 5. It's red time. You'll see it here in a second. And then I'm allowed to put 2 emergency patients in there a day, both at 4 o'clock. So if I have an hour of time, right, in there, I schedule the first one for 30 minutes. Boom, doctor time, 030. Clock facing is very important. We'll talk about that in a second. And then I put the next one in for a 330. So 30 minutes of assistant time and then 30 minutes of doctor time. Now that whole hour is blocked for doctor time. All my X's, all my doctor time is now taken by 2 appointments, even though they both come at the same time. So assistant 1 goes in, assistant 2 goes in with each of those patients. And we evaluate, is this going to be a prescribe and go, a smooth and go? And maybe this one's going to be a inject, drain it, and then treat, right? So you figure out which one becomes the longer of the 2 appointments. You numb one, treat the easy one. They go, and you go back after they're numb and you take care of the longer appointment. Hopefully you don't end up with 2 at the same time. That's not what you want, an extraction next to an extraction. That could be complicated. But you tell them on the phone, you schedule, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my best to fit you in. We have you scheduled at 4. We're going to do the best we can to get you in right at 4 and get you taken care of. You set them up to let them know, look, this is an emergency. We're fitting you in. Now, I just mentioned clock facing. And what that means is we would write next visit 133. 1/3/3. I knew that was a 70-minute appointment. We scheduled on 10-minute units, which I think is very efficient, not 15. And we would go 10 minutes of assistant time, 30 minutes of doctor time, 30 minutes of assistant time. So that chair and that patient were blocked for 70 minutes. How much time was doctor in that 70-minute appointment for? Just these 30. So when I put that in my schedule, I knew I could first 10 minutes overlap, and then my last 30 minutes, I could overlap with doctor over here. That's called dovetailing your schedule, not double booking. I never double book. I don't have a productive column and a non-productive column because my non-productive column always interferes with my productive column. It's not effective. It's definitely not efficient. It's just, we're always running behind. If you're doing that, you're probably always running behind. So I can hit my daily goal doing it the way I'm training you today. This over here, I probably hit my daily goal, but I want to rip someone's head off at the end of the day. So make sure that you understand assistant, doctor, assistant time, right? Assistant, doctor, assistant time, and you're scheduling that way. So slashes, X's, slashes, and Dentrix. A's, doctors, D's, and A's, and like EagleSoft. So you set aside the right amount of time specifically for that patient. And you might say, normally I schedule 30 minutes for this procedure, but this patient takes forever to get numb, so I'm going to add 10 more minutes. So now it becomes a 1-4-3. All right, I'll show you how this looks in the schedule. We have an example of that. All right, what you measure, you improve. So have your goal. Are you hitting it? Maybe you say, look, only put rocks in the morning, and you end up with not a lot of rocks. That tells you we're not getting enough case acceptance. Well, we're not getting case acceptance. Why? We're not treatment planning everything. We're treatment planning one thing. Or we're treatment planning everything, but we're only getting 3 or 4 new patients a month. You can't live off that. You need 15 comprehensive new patients a month, adults, not emergencies, okay, in order to do this sort of thing. You wonder why you can't get there. It's because something in the past is preventing you from doing this, okay? All right, so make sure you're measuring it. Let's take a look at these. All right, this is oh my gosh, this is my schedule 20 years ago. Let's see, 2005. Okay, so this is a long time ago. I screenshotted this from an office and saved it because I wanted, once I had it set up, I wanted to be able to use it. Now, in the top left corner, you see green time, and that green time you can see is 5 hours. It has to be either that $500 or $800 per hour to go in here. You can see in the top right corner, way up by those red arrows, the top right corner, you see 00. That's the production for the day. Now, I'll show you how that changes when I look at just a doctor's schedule. I'll show you views. So here's your views in the top left corner, file options view, and you can set that up in Dentrix. Eaglesoft, I don't think you can change your views, but you can ask Eaglesoft and see if they can make that change. Open Dental, it's open. You should be able to do anything. So, all right. So if I'm scheduling a top-down, bottom-up doctor and it's wide open like this, most likely my gray time there at the bottom, you can see my emergency time I put in. I've got yellow time. My gray or yellow time overlap. I've still got to produce something in the afternoon. And so what I would do is top down, bottom up. Now, the reason I put yellow time in Op2 from 12 to 1 was because my doctor would typically finish a crown prep by noon and be done. And the assistant is with the patient for the last hour or half hour. And so I would have operative in chair 2 from anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour where doctor was free because assistant 1 was doing the temp. I want my doctors doing what they're legally obligated to do and no more. Get out of the room. Well, my temporary only takes me 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. It takes my assistant 30 minutes. I don't care. Get out of the room. That's how efficient you can be. Then be that efficient. That's 5 minutes. If you're doing 3 crown preps a day, that's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is. And we can stack those patients, those appointments right next to each other instead of, well, I don't have a 5-minute increment. That means I got to go 10 minutes. So you're telling me you wasted 10 minutes 3 times a day. Now it's 30 minutes wasted. Okay. So it adds up. I want to be as efficient and effective as possible. Let's do that. So now, if you told me it doesn't take me any time to make my temps because I don't make a temp, it's a same day crown. I'll show you that too. So I would do top down, bottom up. I would put my lower value in my gray time in the afternoon. I might make that yellow time to look like sand, right? Green, look green because of production. The dollar amount was higher. And then I have my emergency for red, okay? Now, remember, I said I was going to do the hygiene side as well. So what I did in hygiene was I figured out I could not pre-block to do 2 quadrants of scaling and root planing every day. It just didn't happen. Or every other day. And if you did that, you'd hit your goal. Well, I don't always have those patients. And for my practices that struggle with perio percentage, should be at what percentage? 35%. If you don't know that, you need to know that number. And so, but the most important thing was that I was scheduling to 1250 a day. So if you look at these hygiene blocks, I have my daily goal, right? I take my daily goal and I break that down. And what I did was, and in today's dollars, this is 2005, but in today's dollars, these red appointments were, scaling and root planning type blocks. They were $200 a block. Okay. You could do 225 if that, whatever your quadrant scaling value is, that's the number we're going to use. That doesn't mean I'm scheduling 3 quadrants of scaling and root planning. You can see I have 3 red blocks here. That's not what that means. It just means the dollar amount is that. So in other words, I want to schedule 3 appointments a day at 200 to 225. Okay. Those are the red ones. And then the purple ones, I want to schedule at, it's probably your perio maintenance fee, your SPT fee. So that would be, let's say 150. So 3 at 150, 3 at 225. Okay. You add those 6 appointments together, I'm already at $1,125 for my daily production. And then I've got 2 open, 8 and 4. Those are prophy only appointments at $100 each. I'm at $1,325 if I follow this. Now, what's great about Dentrix is I can move these around like a puzzle piece that you move, right? You got 9 blocks, 9 spaces, but 8 blocks, and you move them around. Well, I've given you 8 spaces and 6 blocks, okay? So if I've got a $150 patient on my pin board ready to put in there and they go, I need 8 a.m., I just take my 150 block and I move it to 8 and I drop them over that. Very simple. If I've got 2 quadrants of scaling and root planning to do for 2 hours, then I move something out of the way and I put those 2 blocks back to back and I put the 2-hour appointment over it. Very simple. Now, let's say I have no scaling and route planning that day and I still hit my goal. How? Because a $225 appointment can be a $150 pair of maintenance and a $60 exam. I'm at $210 already. Fluoride, x-rays, a PA, a Reston, whatever it is. So when you look at your dollar amount before you pinboard it to drag and drop, you got to look at it. Is it a 150 or a 225? Or is it less than that? I'm going to put it in one of the openings. Okay. Very easy to do. You just got to set it up and put it in. I'm happy to help you with that if you need that. Okay. This is how you do ideal day scheduling. Now let's see what it looks like when I just hit F3, look at my doctor 1 view, right? Or F2 if you have 1 doctor. I just want to look at just doctor. What does that look like? Okay. Here's what it looks like. Now in this office, we were doing, this is 2014, we were doing same day crowns. So you can see it says EMAX. This was a build-up in crown from 8 to 11:30. And you can say, wow, one patient for that long? Yes, I'll explain why. And then you can see my daily goal amount in the top right corner. So far, they hit $4,065. They did 3 crown and build-ups that day. And if your daily goal was $4,000, great. If it's $5,000, I still got an hour open from operative from 11:30 to 12:30 right here on chair 1, because in chair 2, I've only got slashes, assistant time in chair 2. Okay. So what that means is my patient and my doctor spent with patient number 1 spent an hour and a half from 8 to 9:30 doing a build up. You can see there was ribbon in between each build up. So they layered it. And then they designed the crown, and then she got out of the room. At 9:30, she was over in chair 2 going for it while milling was happening. Now, everyone knows, now I've got in chair 1, I've got from 9:30 to 11, an hour and a half where that patient's just going to sit in the chair waiting for their crown to be baked. Everyone knows it doesn't take an hour and a half to get that crown done. We could probably get it done in 30 minutes. But if I were to shorten those slashes to 30 minutes and then have my doctor have to leave chair 2 and come back, that means she can only do a 30-minute procedure in chair 2. I can't do a rock appointment in 30 minutes. So just because the crown is ready doesn't mean that the doctor needs to come back. That chair 1 needs to wait until 11. So I got an hour and a half of putting in operative. Maybe it's an hour for you. Whatever that is. So it could be from 8 to 9. And then you've got an hour from 9 to 10 assistant time. And then you deliver for same day crowns. Maybe you don't deliver them same day. That's fine. Then they can leave at 9:30 while assistant works on it. But I'm still going to block the assistant for that time, even though patient leaves and maybe the crown delivery happens at another time. While I'm in chair 2 being super efficient, right? And maybe this is an effective schedule, but not efficient. You can do it faster. Great. This is a worst case scenario then for length of time. I've got 90 minutes of water time all over this. The crown deliveries are water time, 30 minutes each. One from 11 to 11:30 in chair 1, in chair 2 from 12:30 to 1, and in chair 2 from 4:30 to 5. No emergency time in this day. This is a Thursday. So, and we shortened the length of time of the appointment from 2 to 5, 3 hours instead of 3.5. Doctor was going to help and deliver right away. You might get away with an emergency in chair 1 from like 3:30 to 4 or 4 to 4:30 here, something like that. You could talk about it in your huddle. So this is an example of how you can look at a view of one provider and schedule the goal, taking a pinboard appointment and putting it in and looking at my dollar amount and saying, am I going to hit goal today? Now, maybe you won't have 3 crowns a day in your practice. That's fine. But I'm still going to schedule my first crown prep top down or bottom up. And I'd work my way up if I was going to do same day delivery. If I wasn't going to do same day delivery, I would just get rid of that chair 2 appointment from 12:30 to 1, and I'd move that second crown patient down so that they ended at 1. That would still give me an hour and a half of rock time in chair 1 and vice versa. Okay? So you can always make it work. I always try to start my day by scheduling the first patient at 8. That left me the most available time in chair 2 for the rest of the morning. Okay? I hope this is making sense. You're welcome to email me and ask more questions. All right, here's what hygiene looks like. This is a better view of it because you're looking at just hygiene. So this is a view. And I can literally put in what I want for each of these dollar amounts. So when it's scheduled, I know what it is. Now, keep in mind, this is 2005, so fees have gone up since then. So it says $96 SPT. Well, that might not be what yours is. I forget about the initials. I would just put 150 in there on the purple, 150A, 150B, 150C, and then the red I'd put 225A and then 225B and 225C. So I have 6 different blocks for one provider. Okay, you see it says Hygiene 06 and Hygiene 08 in these examples. So you can screenshot this, you can take a picture of it and look at it, and that way you can go back and blueprint your day. In Dentrix, it's really easy to schedule a goal. Okay. Now, you may not have the ability to do it this way. You don't have Dentrix, so you need to figure out in your software how to translate that. Should be doable, should be easy for you to do. Okay. When to break the rules. We haven't talked about when to break the rules. So if, I'm going to back up here. If I don't fill something, I saved all this rock time and that opening in the morning on chair 1 there, from 11:30, 12:30 is open. I can't fill it. Can't get anybody to take that spot. When do I break the rules? When do I put a sand or a water appointment in there? You guys need to decide that. Typically what I hear is 1 to 2 business days before, usually 1 day before is when we start breaking the rules. Just put whatever you want in there. I'm not a huge fan of robbing Peter to pay Paul and calling a patient and moving them up earlier in the schedule unless you do it correctly. I would never call a patient and say, hey, we have an opening in our schedule tomorrow. Wondering if you want to come in sooner. That conveys you didn't fill something, you're not busy, you had a cancellation, and it's up to them. I would call the patient and say, Dr. Smith asked me to give you a call. As you know, she's very concerned about the appointment that you have scheduled because of that decay, and request that I call you and see if you can make it work for tomorrow at 11:30. Understanding that we understand if it can't work, but she wants to get you in as soon as possible for that. I don't even mention why I have open time. It's just about moving them sooner. So you decide when you break the rules. And what will happen in your hygiene schedule as you're putting things in, it'll start balancing. You won't have a whole day of prophy onlys and have a $600 day. That's just not going to happen. You'll have a very balanced schedule, and you should be doing 6 x-rays annually, 4 bite wings, first PA, additional PA. That's how you should be billing those out as a multi-code. Should not be charging for 7 or more. In fact, you don't even use your full mouth series fee code. You should, especially if you have a pano, because then your pano is not ever covered. So eliminate FMX, only bill out for 6. It usually adds up to just about the FMX. Just beneath it is what you need. You don't want it to be equal to or more. So if your FMX code is $130, this fee, 4 bite wings and a PA, additional PA, should add up to $120. And we do that every year. Now, just because you only charge for 6 doesn't mean you don't take 18. You take as many as you want, but we only charge you for 6, Mrs. Jones. We never charge you for more than 6 x-rays. And then 30 days after you take those x-rays, you can then charge for a pano, and it's now covered 32 days. Email me if you have questions about that. That system should be up and running already. Everyone should be on board with that. All right, how to implement this. Evaluate your schedule every morning huddle and say, did we do it? Is it ideal or is it not? If it's not, why? Let's talk about what happened. It fell apart yesterday and I should have thrown everybody in. I broke the rules all day long because it was yesterday. Or, wow, this is an ideal day. Look at how we did this. Look at this here. That's perfect. Every appointment has to have a dateline of when we scheduled it and who scheduled it, and hopefully the financial arrangements in there, which we'll talk about in our next meeting. Okay? If they reschedule it, the note is in there. Why they rescheduled. Who scheduled it? Our team members' initials. When we called to confirm the appointment, our courtesy call, we put that in there. Left message, answer machine, my initials. Okay? There really is no need to take offense. We're coming up with an agreement here on how we're going to make this look. And if it doesn't look that way, don't be offended. There's a reason why, And we just got to follow those rules, that system, to help us get better at it. So I never took offense when somebody said, Eric, why did you put Ricky Bobby in at 8 for a crown delivery? Well, he works nights, and the only time he can come in is at 8 a.m. So let me say this, when to break the rules. I would say, and I don't like giving permission to break the rules this frequently, because then I think we take that for granted. We're just going to break the rules all the time. But one time a day, one appointment a day, you could probably get away with breaking that rule of putting a sand appointment or a water appointment in the rock slot once a day. But you need to have a good reason for it. They simply can't do afternoon appointments. Or you say, there's just a rock in an afternoon. Well, that's fine. It's going to be even more productive appointment. That doesn't mean you put a bunch of sand and water in the morning. It's just going to be way more than your $4,000 goal. It also means that person who wanted the rock appointment in the afternoon has to wait all the way to your 4 or 6 weeks when they open up. Mornings we got next week. Afternoons, we don't do them then, but you absolutely have to have it. There's no way for you to do a morning. Then it's got to be an afternoon. Here's when it is. Schedule the prep and the delivery, both appointments. Okay? Know your goals. If somebody asks you, what is your doctor daily goal? You need to know that number. Everybody needs to know that number. That is very important, because if you're going to sit down and schedule, it's like putting a puzzle piece. Like, wow, this puzzle piece doesn't even match this puzzle. It's like taking your Disney puzzles, and you've got a Bambi puzzle, but you're trying to put a Buzz Lightyear puzzle piece in there. It's not going to work, because you don't know what puzzle you're doing. You're just putting puzzle pieces in. No, you need to know what the goal, what is it going to look like at the end? You probably have the picture of the puzzle on the box in front of you, so you know what you're doing. You look at it and you go, oh, this is a green piece. Those go down the bottom right. I need to be looking over here. You don't just randomly take puzzle pieces out of boxes and put them in. That won't work. So you need to know your production goals. When you hit that goal, celebrate it. Have some sort of celebration. That could simply be just, hey, congratulations, guys. We're doing it. High five. We're hitting our goal, and you're going to add up. You can do a big celebration later. Maybe you have a daily production goal that you use. I've seen offices do anywhere from $3 to $5 when they hit a daily goal per provider. It adds up. So if you have want information about that, talk to me. We'll see if it's right for your team. It's not right for everybody. And then who is your leader on this? We're going to assign leadership here in a second. And you guys need to decide what it's going to take to make it happen. So why don't you push the pause button right here and talk about who your leader is and what your action plan is to make this happen. What are some things you have to do? So go ahead and push the pause button, work on that, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, hopefully you guys have a really, really clear plan on how you're going to implement this over the next probably month to fully get. It's going to take 6 months for hygiene to take effect. It's going to take about 4 weeks for doctor schedule to take effect. So start now. And you may say, we don't even have any patients. We're scratch practice. We're brand new. We don't have anything. Well, start Ideal now, and eventually it will already be in place. You'll be used to it. You can decide when you break the rules. You might be more flexible with your rule breaking. All right, awesome. So here's what we did today. You should have a daily goal by provider. You should have your views and your clock facing set up to make it really easy. You should know what rock, sand, and water appointments are by value, and your top down, bottom up scheduling. You need to know how to do that. And then to talk about when to break the rules, where to put emergency appointments, things like that. All right, good job, you guys. Next meeting, we're going to do proactive financial arrangements. You cannot be reactive with financial arrangements. You can only be proactive. So we're going to cover how to set that up with permission statement. We're going to do a financial arrangement worksheet. We're going to verify our agreements when we be right before we schedule, and we're going to verify them when they come back in. We'll say things like, oh, I see you talked to Rebecca. She said you were going to pay your portion today, the $1,000 with your Visa. I can do that for you now because we have clear notes on that. And then we'll talk about accounts receivable, how to manage that, what's healthy, and do weekly, not monthly statements. And I'll define what that is. So, all right, you guys are awesome. You did so great. I'm so glad you're still pushing through on this. You're looking to really improve your practice. So thank you for being great participants. I hope everything goes well for you today, and you see plenty of ideal days in your future. Take care, guys.